develop a country, and when the country's education system is affected or goes to sleep, it means that the entire nation actually is affected or goes to sleep. Now today we are looking at mitigating the effects of COVID-19, and with me in studio is Mr. Nathan Gahungu, the chairperson of Association for Promotion of Sustainable Education Services. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for coming to the show, Mr. Nathan Gahungu. Now let's look at the issue of how COVID-19, first of all, in what areas has it affected our education system?
First of all, we all know that at least everybody in our country and world over is aware that the pandemic has really left disastrous effects to our economy, to service delivery, and even livelihoods. So, I normally say this, that there are certain services which are very key to the state or to a country. I usually name education, health, and security. Education is as important as security. Once the security of a country is threatened, it means that actually the country is no more. That's why the country puts a lot of money in defense. Likewise, education is one of the sectors that the country, the nation, the leaders must treat with serious care. Because once it is messed up, it means actually that there is total destruction of the economy and the future, the generation to come. So, to me, I really see that COVID-19 has affected education so much in terms of growth of children, in terms of academics, in terms of welfare, the teachers, and basically even the future. That's why we say that the future is at threat. Therefore, education and COVID-19, it is something that the government should handle with maximum care and give it the impetus it deserves. Otherwise, we are going to end up in a catastrophe. So to me, those key sectors, one, the growth of our children, the academics, livelihoods, and employment, our teachers, and definitely the national economy.
Well, some people are of the view that perhaps government should come up with a program of education recovery program, because for the last 2 years, our education has really been affected. When you look at other countries, actually, for them, they've managed to overcome the COVID stigma, the COVID phobia, and their schools are up and running. Now, let's look at how should government prepare to recover, to help the country recover from this loss of about 2 years?
First of all, this was something that got government off hand, because there must have been a plan for such a disaster. But unfortunately, I don't think that the Minister of Education was prepared to handle such a disaster. But now the government, having seen what has happened, it needs to come out very quickly and put up a very good plan. One, to mitigate further challenges, but also to adapt to the situations. Now, if you look at what is happening, how the COVID has come in, and the nature of our education, we need an integrated approach. Because you see, education, people look at education, but to have meaningful, sustainable education, you need a number of approaches, because education, to have a successful education, you have to tackle very many sectors. Therefore, one, the government has to sit critically and look at a number of approaches to use.
Of course, sitting with stakeholders.
Yes, with stakeholders.
Stakeholders like you, who are consultants in the field.
Yes, and when we talk about stakeholders, we mean government, we mean donors, we mean civil society, we mean community, we mean representatives of teachers, and any other person who is interested in education, success of education. Therefore, that is very key. However, I have always seen some actions which are made, especially by the top leaders, although really they have done their best, and I see that they have left out key stakeholders, some of them really who have some resources, who have some knowledge to add. Therefore, the first thing I would request the Minister of Education is to put up a comprehensive plan to handle education. because there are a lot of cries. Sometimes people are neglected. Sometimes the government is too, it is too fearful. It's as if, assuming this pandemic is to continue for 3-4 years, how would they, for example, handle education? Therefore, to me, stakeholder engagement is very important. Doing a comprehensive plan with studies is also important, but also putting resources, enough resources in this sector is very important, because when you look at what this budget, this year's budget, the amount of money that they put in education, I believe it's not so. It should have been even surpassing almost everything.
It should have doubled the figure.
Yes, doubled. That is
of course, you've raised an issue of resources, and when we talk about resources, people look in terms of finances, but also look at the human resource, because ideally there is even a fear that most teachers may not go back to the classrooms.
Actually, yes, you are right. When we talk about resources, we are looking at both finances and also the human resource, and actually serious planning as well. To me, for example, whereas the government can easily allocate resources, financial resources, but to what extent are they ready to absorb the resources? To what extent are they able to prepare the education to pass through all this pandemic? To me, planning is key, resources are key. Looking at educational resources, particularly teachers and everybody who is interested, is key. Therefore, that's what the government has to. It should treat really education as security, the way they treat security. So to me, I think there is something still missing. For example, if you could go back to the previous State of National Address by the President, he said that for students to go back to school, he's putting a hold. But he should have come out straight, actually, with a plan. You can't leave parents guessing.
No. Of course, the plan, he says that come January, early January, and for tertiary institutions, come 1st November, the education sector will be good to go.
Yes, I read that, but he put subject to a vaccine when everybody is vaccinated, because his reason was that the grandparents and the parents might die. But let me assume that even if they vaccinate, then still their effects, the challenge is still there. To me, what he would have said that for us, we have fixed January as a starting date. What we are going to put in place are standard operating measures, 2, resources, so that we deal with this pandemic, whether it will continue or not. But subjecting it to vaccination only. It's actually not good, because assuming vaccination doesn't help the way because it is actually, they are assuming that it will help.
Now,
but assuming it doesn't help. So what can help are SOPs, and also restructuring the plan. For example, you could say from morning to midday, day scholars will go there. After that, they go home with sanitizers available. Teachers are vaccinated. Then we are looking at use of masks.
Studying in shifts.
Studying in shifts is what I'm talking about. Then, of course, social distancing in class, because if you look at this in the churches, the plan they have for the churches is fantastic. It should be the same plan that can be used
even the same plan they have for Parliament, because Parliament is actually a school.
It's a school.
500 members of
500 members.
And moreover, in such a small place, because you find that in some places, a school of 500 students sits on about 10 acres. Parliament does not sit on even 3 acres.
Exactly.
But we have 500 members of Parliament.
And so, even the markets, he has opened up the market, sports betting. And for me, education is critical. It's critical in the sense that the parent is affected, children are affected, the future generation is affected, and I want also to say that our security is also threatened. So this shouldn't be only subjected to vaccination. The government should come up with a position and say that come rain or shine, we shall start in January. Parents and children prepare we are going to start.
In other words, they would have come up with an elaborate plan.
Exactly.
In terms of either studying shifts, for perhaps schools that have so many students, maybe also increasing on the number of facilities that schools have. But now, that said, what is it that other countries are doing? You widely traveled, and actually during this COVID pandemic, you've had the chance to travel to Europe, to the US, and their schools are actually operating as they used to before. What is it that they are doing that we ought to learn from them very quickly so that we can easily catch up?
First of all, I want to thank the Minister of Education that the issue of pandemic and education is key to her. But what most countries are doing is planning and providing resources, and knowing that education actually is something that is going to put them in a bad limelight if they don't perform. For example, you can't keep people at home, younger people at home. They are going to grow. They are going to know that our governments were irresponsible. So what they have done, they have put a lot of resources in education. They have planned. They have not acted cowardly. I'm sorry to use that word. They have not acted cowardly. And now that is where the focus is. But also, importantly, they have put strict measures on application of SOPs. For example, for example, when you go to US and you are not vaccinated, you can't land there. What is our situation here? For example, the second wave of COVID wouldn't have really come here if they were so strict.
At the airport.
At the airport. But I'm happy that now the government is a little bit strict compared to the last time. But countries are very, very strict on SOPs, people who travel there, on the resources they are putting there, the planning. That's all that has mattered. But also the tendency of everybody being aware, knowing that this sickness is there. Because I have seen our population here, they are no longer even using masks. And may I ask myself, why can't, for example, the government enforce that? You see very many people moving in a town without masks.
So, no, but where is the problem? Because when you go to other countries, you find that people are actually very cautious. In other words, conscious that I need to have a mask, I need to sanitize every other time. When I get back home, I mean, there must be water and soap. So how come that the Ugandan population, we seem to take everything for granted? We seem to have that I don't care attitude.
No, you see, the purpose of the government is to make policies and implement them. So once the government is reluctant, everything will go mess. So now, what is the government? Actually, the government has put up policies, measures, and everything, but there is one thing that they have almost failed to effectively implement the policies. You bring a policy of masks that everybody puts on a mask, but tomorrow you see leaders moving and they meet people without even questioning them. Even some of them, they don't have masks. So that is the problem is on the way we implement our policies. I think there is a challenge there. Once, for example, once you are serious with implementation of policies, with monitoring, with inspection, and eliminating all other forms of corruption and other things that bring back the economy, then you move on very well. So the challenge is only on implementation of our policies, but also on inspection, monitoring, supervision, and all of that.
Well, some say that really the president has played his part. Every other time he has told people, please don't do this, do this. He has actually come out to alert the people. If other leaders also write to the grassroots, we are also doing what the president is doing, don't you think perhaps the awareness and consciousness on COVID-19 would be everywhere?
First of all, I agree with you that the president and even the ministers, particularly the Minister of Education, they have done their part. But the president knows it also that there is a group of cadres, his servants, who have betrayed him because they don't do what he tells them effectively. They are not committed, they are not patriotic, they are interested maybe in earnings. So this is what has actually made everything not go very well. However, to me, I see a lot of hope that if the president continues to be strict, continues to engage all the stakeholders irrespective of where they come from, I think we can defeat COVID, this pandemic. Already there is successes, we have successes. We have really some people who are committed and there is successes. But at the middle level, the implementation is still lacking.
Now, between now and November, between now and January, what preparation should we put in place?
Now,
what should be put in place so that schools can begin without any hitch?
Now, the first thing that should be put in place is planning, short, medium, and long term. But what we need is planning. The students, the parents, the teachers, and everybody involved in education must have direction. They must have that roadmap. Secondly, they should review the policies and actually put up laws to deal with this pandemic, because we have to review. I know there are laws which are there, but they are not effective because, for instance, they are not planned for such a pandemic. They have to review the laws very quickly, but they have also to provide resources.
Of course, somebody that talks of reviewing the laws, perhaps that may take a process. Of course, looking at how our parliament operates at times, it may take a process. But others are of the view that we have enough good laws that can be used to save the situation.
Yes, actually, for the laws, you are right. The laws take long, but there are those laws which don't take actually a long time. And the beauty of it is that our parliament, it is effective. In fact, it's an effective parliament despite other challenges. And I see a lot of morale in members of parliament. If there are issues to deal with the pandemic, there are laws which they can bring up in a short time and they apply. But also there are related laws as they have been applying them. So it's a matter of now bringing in awareness. People understand those laws. People adhere to the laws. But certainly we must treat education as a challenge, as something that needs an emergency plan. So we need an emergency plan. Come what may, children should go to school by next year. This kind of thing that the disease, the vaccine, the what, I think that want to help us so much, because assuming we are frustrated on vaccines, we can't keep our children at home. And to me, what hurts me is that the poor are affected most. There is a growing inequality between the child of the poor and the children of the rich.
Yeah, because the children of the rich have not been affected. They are studying online. They're in international schools. They are actually doing exams. Others are flying out. They are graduating. But children of the poor, that even those who are at universities, others, because even somebody studies from first year to third year without a laptop. Now, when you talk of online, it means they should buy a laptop, they should have a modem and data,
yes,
which is not available. So now, how do we really address that inequality so that, because 2-3 years down the road, there will be a sharp divide in our society. You find that the children of the rich were not affected, the children of the poor stagnated for 2-3 years.
So that's what I was telling you. That if the government, I know the government will say they don't have resources, maybe to provide all the scholastics, to provide all the logistics and everything. But there is something the government can do which is not costly. Just to restructure the education plan slightly and also the way the curriculum is done. For instance, what I was telling you, if you say children start from 8 to midday, then others come.
Another group
comes in. What does it cost the government?
Or maybe one group studies up to Wednesday, and another.
Yeah, it is still better. Yes, from Monday to Wednesday.
And another group to.
How much will that one cost the government? Nothing, especially for the scholars. Secondly,
even boarding schools.
Even boarding schools. Parents are willing to buy masks, and already masks are available. Sanitizers are available. Awareness can be done at school. So if you keep them at home, you deny them awareness, you deny them education. A school is a home. You deny students and the pupils, they are home. You are depriving them of their right. So, this growing inequality is very bad because systematically you are making some people poor, you are making some people vulnerable, then another group is becoming richer and richer. So what will the situation be in the next 5 years? So to me, that's why I bring in actually the issue of security. That the president, who is an expert on security, should look at what will happen next for 5 years. You will have violence, you will have conflicts, you will have people who are not satisfied because even when you are employing, you just say you want qualified people. But there are very many impediments to these people qualifying.
Now,
therefore,
there is also a serious challenge here that you had students on self-sponsorship at university and tertiary institutions. The sources of income of their parents were affected by COVID-19, and chances are they've not been able to complete. How should government come in? How should government help those? Because as you're saying, that is it is a bigger group, and as you said, it can actually easily be mobilized into criminality.
Exactly. For me, I'm hopeful that our government is clever, is efficient enough, is capable of providing students loan to every student who needs that loan. Actually, that should be,
especially those who are already there and were affected by COVID.
Even those ones who are about to go there and they have passed. In fact, everyone who was at school, there must be a relief for such, especially from the poor families, because the component, the poor person, they spend a lot, they sell their things, they lost their businesses, they suffer. So for us to catch up and reduce the inequality, the gap, and to be safe in the future, we must have education relief fund, so that these people the students can access this money, pay their school fees. In fact, to me, it should be as comprehensive as possible. But I know our government will say they don't have enough resources. But at least an effort should be put there, so that at least there is a relief for these students, for the parents. My concern is always the person who is unfortunate enough to have an income and has a bright child who can be useful for the future. Otherwise, we should not separate, we should not create classes unnecessarily. Well,
education, of course, schools are centers not only for learning, but also talent development. Those who want to be musicians, those who want to be actors, those who want to be athletes, those who want to be footballers. All these talents are seen from schools. And now, 2 years now running, when these people are at home, it means government needs to do a lot more than that. Now let's look at preparing the parents and the pupils or students to getting back to school, because ideally, you see, they say when you delay something, it decays. So some of the students, 2 years, because even this long-term holiday, the December holiday, for you who's a teacher, you know that when it comes to first term, students take like almost a month to catch up because they are still in the Christmas mode, that festive season. But now these are 2 years. So how much preparation should be put in place? How should they prepare the parents, the students, so that when they go back to school, they can easily get into the system of learning?
Of course, first of all, we have to agree that the loss brought in by pandemic has not only affected other sectors, but also education. So certainly there is a loss also in academics, loss in everything. So of course the pupils and students have to agree that they have lost time, they have lost something on their syllabus.
But something significant.
Yes, very significant. But what is very key is that parents and students are still willing, hopeful, and prepared to go to school. Actually, every time the president comes to address a nation, they are willing, they want to hear. And it is always looks like bad news when they see something that looks that there is perhaps something not clear. For example, if you say, if we have vaccination of this type, it means if the vaccination are not there, forget. What the president should do, should give us a plan within our means. And also which says that if this one is not there,
that should have
still
plan
yes,
A, B, and C.
Exactly.
That gives us assurance that come January, come November, tertiary institutions and secondary schools or primary and secondary schools will be able to start.
Yes, and of course what also makes people worried is that government institutions, especially the secondary schools and the primary schools, perform badly. Even before the COVID came, they were doing badly. But now when the government also looks like it is postponing, it makes it worse. Because you ask yourself, the same government that was unable to take education very well and the private sector was excelling is the same institution that is postponing, but also the private sector, the private schools and the teachers are the ones calling for opening up of schools.
So actually not teachers in government schools, because for them their salary comes.
Yes, I mean the private schools.
Yes.
The private schools and teachers are the ones saying open. And for us, I think we listen to them. Why? Because they have already shown us that they are more capable, they are efficient. Why? Because even before the COVID came, government schools were doing badly. So the trust in planning of the government is really in question. However, there is only one thing. We know that the president has always steered the nation very well. Actually, that goodwill is what is making things okay. Otherwise, without that, there would be strikes, there would be issues actually. Yeah, but back to what you have said about preparation, it's only government which is not prepared. The parents, the children are prepared. And other stakeholders, the civil society, even the teachers, even if you go to government schools, the teachers will say they are willing to teach. The one who is not prepared is government. Yes. So
government should prepare as fast as they can. So that because according to you, everybody is prepared. Now let's look at this. We find that Uganda was actually a center of education in Eastern Central Africa. People would come as far as Malawi, yes, to come and study here. Zambia, Congo, even Somalia coming to study here. But because of the COVID and the subsequent lockdowns, we are now seeing students at the border areas actually. They're crossing over to go and study. Yes. Those in Busia have now gone to Kenya. Those in Tsora crossing to Rwanda. Those in Kasese Bwera crossing over to Congo. So now, do you think that we shall regain that status?
Yes, I think Uganda still is at an advantage, and it has the conditions of education in Uganda are much better than other countries. First of all, education in other countries is expensive, but also a situation where you don't allow people maybe to exercise freely, where security is in doubt, peace is in doubt. I think that's, for example, Southern Sudan, you can't study from there. DRC, we are not sure what will happen. So the peaceful environment in our country makes Uganda still the best country where you can have education. But also, I think Uganda has other advantage. The way Ugandans interact with the outside world is much better than other countries. For instance, look at the way we go to study in other countries. The condition is good. It's not the same like some of our countries. The opposition leaders don't jump out the way they want. Actually, some have kept in their countries. They can't move. You can't move. But for Uganda, even they abuse, they come back.
In Guinea, a whole former president is not allowed to leave.
So to me, I think Ugandans should be patriotic. When we see something bad happening, it doesn't mean that the whole country is bad. For example, crossing to Rwanda now, Uganda does not stop Rwandans from coming, but the Rwandans don't want Ugandans to cross, I think. So to me, I still feel that Uganda, as it is, it will catch up, and our country is still the best. almost one of the best in Africa.
Yeah, but catching up, of course, is not something that will just come just like that. It will require a lot of efforts, and this is what we are looking at, how much efforts need. You've talked about resources, you've talked about sensitization, time and again. Now let's get back to the curriculum. By the time COVID came in, the Ministry of Education, through National Curriculum Development Center, had just given us a new curriculum.
Yes.
And now these are 2 years. The new curriculum has not been tested. At that time, they were in the process of training teachers on the new curriculum. So don't you think government should use this time between now and January, perhaps to train teachers on the curriculum, so that by the time they report students, then we are good to go?
That's what I was saying, that almost everyone is prepared. It's only government which is really not prepared. It's moving slow. It's prepared, but moving a little bit slow. They have to haste and move very fast. Yes, on the curriculum, as we have said, we have lost significantly in implementation of the new curriculum. But still, we can catch up as long as we start. The only challenge we have, the government has phobia. It's fearing. It's like a person who doesn't want to learn how to swim. When things are bad.
You don't want to learn how to ride a bicycle.
Exactly. Or learn how to drive.
Yes.
So the car is there, but you are fearing that you will. What actually, I must repeat this, that what we need is to implement SOPs and restructure a bit. Otherwise, there is nothing to fear. Okay, there is something to fear, but this pandemic will remain perhaps, but we should be able to move. Now, for the curriculum, for me, I'm not pessimistic about that. I know we shall catch up, because one thing is the teachers we have, I think they have passion. In fact, that's a big difference in Uganda, that once you start teaching, you have a passion. I have taught for 4 years in a school, a USO school. Once you start teaching, you have a passion. You want to see your students, children pass.
And even after passing, succeed in life.
Yes, succeed in life, but also to cover the syllabus, which I see teachers always have. And actually, even now, the teachers are willing to go to school, irrespective of the situation. But the one who is fearing is actually government. Maybe I have suspicion that the government doesn't maybe have resources, or they just want to become over-prepared to deal with the pandemic. But in that process, it is a gamble.
Well, still tuned to UBC TV, and this is Education Forum. We are looking at mitigating the effects of COVID-19 to the education sector. When you talk about the education sector, of course, it has so many stakeholders. We have the farmers, because you look at agricultural products, the prices fluctuating, just because one of the biggest market, the schools, are not operating.
Yes.
So that actually affects their prices. Yeah, but again, now that, because now we're looking at the way forward, let's look at the monitoring.
Yes.
Because the other time, when they opened partially for candidate classes, there was a high number, or a big number, of actually female students who dropped out.
Yeah.
Now, do you think this time round it is bound to increase? So how can that be addressed, so that we don't see boys ending up, boys and girls ending up in child marriages and abandoning school?
First of all, this is again the same answer. The government doesn't need to procrastinate this program. They have to start very fast. Secondly, they have to look at issues of relief, and also look at the damage, loss and damage. How much was lost, and what is the extent of damage. Now, in terms of education, if we talk about loss and damage, we are looking at how much have other stakeholders lost, especially those who supplement the government in the provision of education service. But we also want to look at the students and the pupils, how many were affected. Because if we know how many were affected, of course we shall be comparing with the previous situation where the conditions were okay. Then we shall know, we shall be able to assist. But also, the government must come up with a comprehensive program still, more so to support girls. Because that I have seen talking about COVID relief, but I have not seen the commitment of the government to put up a program to help girls who have been affected. For me, every family which has 5 girls, at least there is an effect, a negative effect. And
actually, every family that has more than 2 adolescents,
yes,
there is trouble now.
There is trouble.
Yes.
And the government, I don't know if the government really has done a research, try to know that, but parents can witness, can testify. I was shocked recently when a parent came to me, a girl had become pregnant, and the parent was very annoyed, was sending away the girl to the grandmother. But I reminded this parent that this is, the girl is 16 years old, that this is COVID, the effect of COVID. So I think there is a very big damage, loss in terms of those who had invested in education. And we need also psychosocial counseling for parents, for students, and everyone basically. So the government looks at everything in terms of money, but also there are those ones where the government has to direct. And how does the government do it? Just coming up with policies, laws, and regulations which are good enough to guide the population. You know, the population can be willing, but if they are not guided properly, you can mess up, you may even fail to exploit the resources that you have. Now, that's all we are talking about. But I think it's a high time that the government stands on its feet, stops listening so much to the donors, and they act.
Now, let's look at you people in the civil society, experts and consultants in education. To what extent or what efforts have you put in place to engage government so that it can look in the very direction you want the country's education system to move?
First of all, I must admit that the civil society and other non-state, other people are not in the government.
Other non-state actors.
Yes, actors. We have failed on our part, partly. For instance, I was looking at the role of civil society in promoting maybe education and also SOPs. It's still lacking. Why? Because first of all, they lack either capacity or they don't have resources or simply they also are needed to be encouraged.
Well, I can see really time is not on our side. I would beg that you look into the camera and give us your parting shot in a minute.
I would want the government to play its role without fear. The government must come out, plan properly, provide resources, and also have an engagement with all the stakeholders in the education sector so that schools start, children go to school, parents also prepare to make sure that education system kicks off. This cannot be the only role of the government. We need everybody to participate. We need civil society, we need government, we need community leaders, we need donors, and we have to make sure that this is a challenge that is there perhaps to stay. Therefore, we should make sure that we get prepared to deal with this, not only for ourselves, but also for future generation. I would also want to tell other people, especially the ministries and other people who think they are not in education, that actually education is everywhere. Therefore, we should use an integrated approach to address the issue of education and COVID pandemic.
Well, I must thank you very much, Nathan Gahungu from APSES, an educationalist, and also from the civil society. And I must say that the civil society should not only make noise when it is politics, but now even in education, you should come out to guide the country. Mandakola Mazima is my name, saying bye-bye.
GoTV was the best decision James has ever made. Finding a good place to watch football was never easy, but it was costly until James discovered something big. Now he can finally enjoy the benefits of homegrown advantage with a decoder and 1 month of GoTV Valley. For just 25,000 shillings, enjoy the world's biggest leagues and cap competitions. GoTV Uganda, love it.
Echa COVID-19 chijja kugwa only if we stay at home, observe physical distancing, wear masks properly, sanitize or wash our hands with soap and water regularly, or get vaccinated now.